Hey team, what is happening? Thomas Rowe, Blueprint to Bluechip, joined with my co-host and co-founder Aaron Sarles. And today, a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago, Aaron, that we came up with the concept of Path to the Pros. And what this basically how this show evolved is one of the first questions that we get from the young athletes and the families that we work with is, what does it take to get to the pros? What does it take to get to the Olympics? What does it take? What does it take? What does it take? And today we have a special guest. We have Joel Honigford on. I probably butchered that, Joel. You're going to have to correct me on that one. And I just asked you about that off camera. One of the things that we say, Joel's going to share a little bit about his story and how he made his way to the NFL and what he's doing right now. But one of the questions, as I mentioned, is what does it take? The one answer that Aaron and I have, or the few answers that Aaron and I have, we don't have a secret sauce. There is no blueprint, so to speak, to get to the pros. But what we do know is you can't cut corners. You can't phone it in. There's no shortcuts, and you just can't cut. You just can't check a box. So what I'm going to do now is turn over the floor to Joel. Joel, one, pronounce your last name correctly for the audience, and two, tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, and how you ended up at Michigan.
Yeah, so Joel Honigford, but you know what? I let people say it however they want. I don't get too picky about it. As long as they have the general idea, it works for me. But I grew up in Sugar Creek, Ohio, real small town, Amish country, really. Like when you think of Amish country, Ohio, that is where I grew up. No, I am not Amish. I'm not Amish. But grew up in small town, Ohio. Both my parents went to Ohio State. They met there. My oldest brother went to Ohio State. And then my middle brother went to Mount Union, which is a powerhouse of Division III football. And, I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school. I tried golf in 7th grade. I stopped golf in 8th grade. And I ended up being pretty good at football. So I garnered some interest from 31 colleges. I think I ended up with 31 offers, which was an absolute blessing, especially from my high school. The only person in the recent history when I was there to have gone to a Division I school was a gentleman by the name of Jason Andres, who played for Michigan State. He played basketball there. So I was the first football player to go to a Division I school out of my high school. And it was a blessing, and I loved it. And I spent 6 years there. Ultimately ended up going to the NFL, signing with the Cardinals. A short stint in the NFL. I would be the type of guy that you would describe as, oh, he had a cup of coffee in the NFL. That's me. I did not have a long tenure. I was there bouncing around for a year and a half until ultimately I decided I was done. That's kind of the general overview of, my past in the game of football.
Well, hold on. Let's back up a little bit because I have so many questions. One, how did you come home and tell your parents I'm going to Michigan when both of them went to Ohio State?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. My bedroom all throughout high school was Ohio State. Like it had Block O on it, and I was a big Ohio State fan growing up. I mean, both my parents went there. But as I was getting recruited, I kind of understood that you can't have a favorite team like that. It doesn't work like that because teams want you, and then you have to make the best decision for you ultimately. And Ohio State kind of weeded their way out of that process. They didn't even actually end up offering me, and it was kind of a messy story, but it was for the better. Anyways, we were taking a visit to the University of Oregon, and we were in Eugene. It was a beautiful campus, and then we were like, all right, let's go get some food. And we were headed out somewhere else. I don't remember where, but we stopped at a gas station, and they had the attached Subway,
Right.
and we were eating the Subway, and this was after I had my visit, and I just knew I wanted to go to Michigan. It didn't really make any sense, but I knew it's where I wanted to go. And so I said to my parents, I was like, I'm going to go to Michigan. And my dad goes, are you sure about that? Like, you have a lot of other really good options out there. And I was like, nope, I know I want to go to Michigan. And my mom, she didn't care. And she was like, all right, that sounds great. I would say it took probably 6 months for my dad to convert to a Michigan football fan. Now, he still roots for Ohio State basketball, and I have zero problems with that because I didn't play Michigan basketball. But he does root for Michigan football.
Interesting, especially after Michigan won the national championship in basketball. You would think he'd be a Michigan basketball fan. Tell us about the recruiting process. 31 offers, and tell us about narrowing it down to your final 3, because that's another question that we get from young athletes and families is, if they're fortunate enough to get multiple offers, how do you narrow it down? What were your 3, and how did you narrow it down to those 3?
Yeah, I mean, what a blessing it was to have that many options.
Sure.
And people from the outside looking in are like, man, that's incredible. How awesome is that? But what you don't see is how hectic that is. Just
Sure.
the amount of conversations you're having, and people are telling you, we got these nice facilities. We can do this and that for you. You're going to start day one. They're giving the whole thing to you, and everybody does it. So the way that I was advised to choose a school is they said, you need to look at the people in the facility. You need to look at the support staff, maybe not necessarily the coaches because they're so in and out, the support staff, your training staff, the weight room staff, and decide if those are people you want to surround yourself with.
Sure.
So that's ultimately why I decided Michigan. Is I felt like the support staff in the training room and the weight room staff was what I wanted to be a part of. And I liked the culture that they kind of had going. And another thing that I liked, which isn't really, a helpful answer to anybody else, but when I would go talk to other schools and I would say, hey, who do you hate the most? Like, which school do you guys hate the most? And the answer was always Michigan. It was always Michigan. And I was like,
awesome.
That's interesting. I kind of want to be a part of that.
That's great. So you were originally recruited as an offensive lineman. I mean, you're, and I already have our first questions from our audience that came in. How did you switch over to tight end? Was that your decision or was that the coach's decision?
It wasn't really my decision. Well, I guess it was, but what happened was, give you a little backstory. I was starting to progress to become talented enough to play on the field. I had like the potential to play during COVID 2020. So there was 3 tackles who were in competition to take this two starting spots. The other 2 guys had started before me, so they had a little bit more experience. And we go into COVID. One of the guys doesn't show up one day, and we're like, oh, where's he at? They're like, oh, he's got COVID. And if, for those who don't remember, what they would do is the health department calls him, hey, have you been in close contact with anybody? Now, this has happened before on the Michigan team. And what guys do, no, I'm not in close contact with anybody. And they go to quarantine for 2 weeks. He did not have the same plan. He said, yep, I've been in contact with Joel and this other gentleman. So us 3. And they call me, say, hey, you're going to quarantine for 2 weeks. We go through that 2 weeks. By the time we get out, the season's upon us. Our O-line coach meets with us. He goes, hey, listen, we just don't have enough time to sort this out. So it's going to be these 2 guys. Joel, you're going to, be a backup again. You'll be our first guy in. But, it was obviously super defeating because I was so close to it.
Right.
But I had done enough to show the value that I had. So Harbaugh, he was really good at this. He came in and he said, quite literally, I had an epiphany of Honigford at tight end. And then he just goes, do you want to play tight end? And I was like, yeah, of course. And it was that easy. It was that easy. And like, I wasn't the only person he did something like this with. He had done it with one of our defensive linemen, moved him to offensive tackle. He now plays for the Browns. He did it with one of our linebackers. He moved him to running back. He plays for the Titans. Like, he had an eye for this kind of stuff. I just didn't think that would be me. So that's kind of how that happened. It really wasn't anything in my doing other than the fact that I showed that I deserved to be on the field, and he found a way to make that happen.
Well, let's talk context, because a tackle, I know that you're 6'6", and you probably came into Michigan at over 300. So you had to trim down to become tight end.
Well, actually, it's interesting. I came into Michigan at 273 pounds. I was undersized, but they liked my frame. So they're like, we're going to develop him. I really struggled to gain weight. I know it sounds foreign, but it's a real thing. And I struggled to gain weight. Not until COVID, we got sent home for 6 months. I'm eating my mom's food every single day, and I'm eating a lot of it. I finally get to 300 pounds. Like when we go back, then he tells me, hey, congratulations on hitting 305 pounds. You're now a tight end. But like they didn't want me to cut down right away because they still wanted me to be a reserve tackle.
Right.
So I was playing tight end at 290 pounds. No, I was really not a tight end. I was just an extra offensive lineman at that point. But that transition is something you don't hear of in sports. You don't usually go from tackle to tight end. You go from tight end to tackle. That is pretty common.
Yeah.
So it was weird. And I played that next season. We had 6 games. We went 2-4. We were not very good. I played that season at 290. Moving into spring ball that year, he just comes up to me in practice. He goes, just lose the weight. Literally just said it like that. He's like, you can lose the weight. I was like, okay. So from that spring ball to fall camp, I went from 290 to 255, and I felt better than ever.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. So our first question, Joel, is from Marcus. He's 17, plays offensive line. He's from Pennsylvania. I play offensive line. And I feel invisible. Nobody talks about us. Nobody recruits us the same way. Nobody cares about our stats. How do you stay mentally strong in a role where recognition was almost non-existent?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding what your purpose is for the team. Your fulfillment doesn't come from catching passes or making these crazy plays or running for touchdowns. Your fulfillment comes from making that happen. And the faster that you can understand that, the better off you're going to be and likely more successful you'll be, because you're right. It's not a position of recognition. The only time you get recognized is when you do something wrong. And it's tough, but there is a joy in one of my favorite quotes from, I forget who the guy is, but it said one of the greatest joys in life is moving a man from point A to point B against his will.
Sure.
And it's like, yeah, that's real. Like that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think you got to reframe it in your mind. Sure, you're not might not end up in the newspapers. Like I remember when I was getting recruited, it still wasn't in the local newspaper. They wouldn't talk about it. I don't know why, but you got to understand the bigger picture of the game of football. Like
right.
Everybody else needs you to do your job. And when you can understand that the reason big plays happen is because of you, I think you'll get a little bit better sense of fulfillment in that.
Awesome. For context, I've shared with Joel that both my brothers were also as big as Joel, 6'6". They played at San Diego State with Marshall Falk. Matt was a left. This is an interesting stat that Matt, and it'll probably resonate with you, Joel. Matt played left tackle, and in his 9 years of playing football, 4 in high school and 5 at San Diego State, he never touched the ball once. My other brother dropped on 2 fumbles, right? But as you think about every other sport, you touch the ball: baseball, volleyball, basketball, golf, tennis, whatever. Can you imagine going 9 years and never touching the pigskin in a game? I mean, that's the unsung hero of a left tackle. Right. Yeah. And usually also for context, I mean, most of our audience knows this, but the left tackle is usually your best offensive lineman, playing the blind side of the quarterback. So I mean, Joel can get into more of that. So you play 5 years, and I'm so sorry, having to deal with COVID. Aaron and I talked to a lot of families and a lot of players that it was so unfair. A lot of these athletes just got robbed of not just 1 season, not just 2. Some of them were robbed for 3 seasons. Did COVID affect you?
In a sense, our team, it may have, looking back on it now, been one of the best things for us because, like I said, we went 2-4. It was a terrible season. And it was never because of a lack of talent. We had 24 draft picks on that team. We had some studs. We had a first-round draft pick come off of that team. The issue was that we didn't have anybody who knew how to lead. Nobody knew how to lead anybody. We just had our highest performers in positions of leadership, and they didn't know how to actually lead anybody. So what we did in that off season, the problem was big enough where it had to be addressed. It wasn't something that we could just kind of push under the rug. So we brought in a former Navy SEAL, Captain Tom Chaby, who did performance and mindset and leadership coaching with us. and essentially flipped the whole program on its head. It became a place of accountability instead of a place of excuses. So that was a huge benefit as a result of COVID, as a result of things being that bad. And then also just for myself, it was nice that I could have another year because
Sure.
I switched positions 3 years into my career.
Right.
So now I was playing a brand new position I've never played before. And 2 years of film on a position that you have hardly played is probably not enough to be able to convince an NFL team, hey, come take a chance on me.
Right.
So having that extra year of eligibility as a result of COVID was huge for me because I could just add more film to my resume.
Sure. So walk us through, and then I'm excited to get into like draft day. So you spent your entire life, your young life, you were a 3-sport athlete, you go to Michigan and you're like, okay, I'm getting recruited to play offensive line. And then you get thrown this curveball and this is going to happen to a lot of athletes. At what point did you like, okay, I enjoy the opportunity to learn tight end, but now I've got 2 years or 3 years to really perfect this position to go to the NFL? Or was that your goal to go to the NFL?
It was always a goal, but not something that was make or break for me.
Okay.
I knew if I was given the opportunity, I was going to take it. Now, for 4 years, that was not in the picture. Like I was a backup offensive lineman to a tight end who was 290 pounds, who played in 6 games, and it just really wasn't in the picture until it was.
Right.
And the reason it became in the picture is because I had just implemented systems into my day of, hey, this is how I want to move forward every day. This is what I want to make sure that I'm doing. I remember I had a conversation with our head athletic trainer, and I had gotten hurt, and I was coming in when he asked me to and leaving as soon as possible. And he pulled me aside and he said, "What are you doing?" So, "What are you talking about? You told me to come in at 1:00. He was like, "When'd you get out of class?" I was like, 12. Said, "Why did you not come here before?" "Well, because you told me to be here at 1:00. And this is no slander to walk-ons, but he said, "Stop acting like a walk-on."
Wow.
You're a scholarship player. Start acting like a scholarship player. You need to be in here whenever you're not in class. And I think that goes for anybody. Like, even if you are a walk-on, don't act like a walk-on.
Right.
Act like a scholarship player. Handle your business accordingly. Don't just do the bare minimum and think that it's enough. So understanding that was big for me. And the fact that you just have to sacrifice a portion of your free time in order to progress towards your goals. Like, there was a lot of sacrifice that I had to make, and a lot of that was free time that I wish I could have had in the moment, but glad that I did sacrifice it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You pick and choose your battles, and ultimately it comes down to the systems that you implement day in and day out and what you're willing to do and give up. And that's kind of what led me to having the opportunity to play in the NFL or sign with an NFL team.
Awesome. So you get recruited by 31 schools. You decide on Michigan, arguably one of the top 5 athletic football programs in the country and has been for decades. This is a question that we get because a lot of younger athletes will look at you and they'll go, "Joel's got it. He's got it." When did a imposter syndrome ever hit you? And walk us through that if it did.
I experienced imposter syndrome for probably the first 2 years at Michigan, and then immediately when I got to the NFL. And here's why: because humans are really good at convincing themselves that, like, any moment of uncomfortability, they don't belong in it. Whether it's good or bad uncomfortability, our mind will just go to survival. It's how our brain is wired. So when I got to Michigan, I'm around dudes who are in my class who are going to start that year. And I compare myself to them. I'm like, dude, I do not belong here. I'm from small town Ohio. What am I doing here?
Right.
But everybody has a different journey. Everybody who I saw go to the NFL had a different journey. Some guys switched positions 3 years in and then finally gained the opportunity, and some left 3 years after going to Michigan. But comparison is the thief of joy. And that's what imposter syndrome is. We we compare ourselves to these people around us and then immediately convince ourselves that we don't belong in the position that we are in. And then what happens is we believe we don't belong. We start behaving like we don't belong. And then we can never perform to the level of our potential. This happened in Arizona. When I got to Arizona, I'm walking in and Kyler Murray and Zach Ertz, James Conner are in there, Budda Baker. I'm like, nope. Like, I know that I played in front of 100,000 fans at Michigan, but I certainly do not belong here. I'm just a blocking tight end. And we went through rookie mini camp, and I had this belief in my mind that I didn't belong. So I started jumping off sides, dropping passes, and I would get so rushed during the play that I would forget the play call. Ooh. Now, I was struggling to have this realization of, hey, snap out of it. But the GM came up to me and he helped me out because he goes, what is this? Like, this is not the guy that we signed. So I kind of had this realization, yeah, you're right. Like, that is not the guy that you signed. The guy that you signed didn't believe that he didn't belong. Like, he knew he belonged. So don't compare yourself to anybody else. Understand that everybody has their own journey and their own way of navigating life. Some guys make it to the NFL after 3 years. Some guys make it after 6 years. Some guys don't make it at all. And that's okay. It doesn't matter. Just, you can't let your mind spiral on the fact that you don't belong.
Sure. Okay, your career at Michigan's coming to an end, and you've made the decision, I'm going to the NFL. Draft day comes. Walk us through that.
I figured I would go undrafted just based on kind of what I heard. They said, maybe late round if a team wants to take a chance on you just to secure you. But in my mind, I was like, I'm probably going to go undrafted. That wasn't anything other than being realistic. But I didn't know how that worked. Like, I've seen it through years. I've seen guys on my team go undrafted, but I'm like, how does that work? Well, day one of the draft, teams are calling. They are calling and saying, this is what we'll offer you, the guaranteed money of the contract that we'll offer you if you come here. And it starts out really low, like really, really low.
Right.
And then as the days progress, teams take, for me, I was a tight end, so teams take tight ends and then they lose interest. So what started with 8 teams that were originally interested in me on day 2 goes to 5 teams. Now, day 2 of the draft, 3, 4, and 5 rounds. Or yeah, right? No, sorry, 2 and 3 on day 2. And then so more teams are drafting, more teams take tight ends. They fall off and lose interest. By day 3 of the draft, which is the remainder of it, I have 2 teams who are interested, the Cardinals and the Jaguars. And this was the most hectic day for me because it's the day that either somebody's going to draft me and I'll be extremely grateful for that, but more than likely I will be signing as an undrafted free agent. So my agent's going back and forth with these teams. I'm watching the draft and seeing, who's picking a tight end, because if they're still interested in me, but they've selected a tight end, I probably don't want to go there because they already have their guy.
Right.
And so I'm looking at the rosters, seeing, what's the availability look like. I can't really see what other undrafted free agents they're taking, but and I prayed about it, man. It was probably one of the more stressful days I've ever had in my life.
I bet.
And by the end of it, so we're about 20 plus phone calls in. In my mind, I'm like, I'm going to go to Arizona. That's where I want to go. And so I tell my agent, hey, I'm going to go to Arizona. That's where I want to be. And he said, all right, well, what is your number for Jacksonville? What is your number for guaranteed money that you are either going to go or they're going to say no? And so I threw out a reasonably high number for an undrafted free agent. And he said, all right, I'm going to call him. And he calls him. And the whole time I'm thinking, I'm going to Arizona. Like, I know, like, that's where I'm feeling led. That's where God's calling me, is go to Arizona. And he calls me back. He said, they're in. And I was like, I'm not going. And he was like, what? I said, I'm not going to Jacksonville. I'm going to Arizona. And he said, just so you know, you're about to burn a bridge. I said, that's okay. That's fine with me. I'm going to go to Arizona. It's where I feel like I'm being led to and where I see the most opportunity. He calls them back, calls me. They said, if you ever get cut, don't ever talk to him again.
Bingo.
Right. No problem.
Oh,
So that's ultimately how I ended up choosing Arizona. It was quite an interesting process that I didn't know how it unfolded until I just went through it.
wow. That's a story for the ages right there. So we got Tyler, 19, undrafted after college. I just finished my college career and didn't get drafted. I'm trying to stay in the game, but I don't know how to mentally reset after that. What do you do in those first few weeks after draft day?
Well, for me, like I said, it happened during the draft. So I knew that I was going to land somewhere. But here's what I'll tell you, Tyler, is that the world is a wonderful place because it's full of opportunities, especially in the game of football. I mean, you have the CFL, the UFL, the NFL, obviously, a whole bunch of arena leagues. There's opportunity out there. So it's a matter of you being able to find that opportunity. Just be in a pursuit to find it. If they want you, they're going to get you. And if you are confident in your abilities, then just pursue it. The NFL maybe isn't realistic. I have no idea. I don't know your skill level. But then look at the UFL. Look at the CFL. There's a whole lot of other options. Just because the NFL said no doesn't mean the door's closed. There's plenty of other doors to walk through. So don't just think that it's over because the NFL said no. It's not how it works.
No doubt. No doubt. There's so many options. I mean, I think that, that Joel, I think I shared with you, when I was coming, I feel like I'm making this about me. It's not about me. It's about Joel. But coming up, everything was D1. It was D1, yeah. D1. Now, I want to go back to, are you the youngest? Because I think you said that you had a brother that went to a Division III powerhouse. Now, how did he pick that? Because this is important for athletes to know that not everything is about Michigan. Not everything is about Oregon. There are still some great D2, D3 schools that you can play at. And now with social media, you could get some traction.
Right. Yeah. So just in terms of skill level, he wasn't at the skill level to go to a Division I school, and he knew that, but he could have gone Division II or Division III. So he had to make the decision, what do I want to prioritize? Do I want to put all of my chips in the football basket and go as high as I can still, which is fine. He didn't decide to do that. He said, you know what, I'd like to play at a high level school, but I realized that maybe this isn't the rest of my life. So he chose Mount Union, which truthfully, Mount Union has had plenty of guys go to the NFL. There's no lack of that really at the Division II or Division III level. Ultimately, like with recruiting, sorry, I'm jumping ship here, with recruiting and then with the NFL, if you're good enough, they will find you.
Exactly.
Like, people think they have to pay for all these services to do this and, help me with recruiting and help me get recruited and put me in touch with coaches. If you're good enough, they're going to find you.
Right.
That's just how it works. And say you get overlooked. Well, that's why the transfer portal is a wonderful thing, because you get overlooked and you go to a Division II school and you outperform everybody, the Division I school is going to want you. So if you're good enough, you'll be found. So back to the question. He knew that he wanted to play at a high-level football school, but he also wanted to prioritize his academics. So he chose Mount Union. It was close to home. It was an hour away. It all just seemed to work out based on what he was prioritizing.
Awesome. Deshaun, 21-year-old college grad, what's the one thing you'll tell a player going into their pro day who's playing with house money, someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove?
I don't know if there's much more to say than what you just said right there. There's no reason to stress. Like when I went into my pro day, sure, I was nervous, but when you get in moments where you're debating your confidence, it is very simple. You just look at the evidence of what you've done. I had trained for 6 months up to that point, and I knew what I was capable of in these drills. So I was like, I should expect these times. And if it goes better, great. If it goes worse, probably just had a little bit of a bad day. Ultimately, they're not going to make their decision based on this time I'm about to put on this paper when I got here at 6 a.m. and I'm running my drills at 12. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, sure. It's something for them to look at. And if You run a 4.240, then people are going to look at you. But if you're supposed to run a 4.3 and you run a 4.44, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Like the reason that the combine and then pro day are a thing is because they want to see what you can do under pressure. Bingo. As long as you don't entirely fold, you're going to be just fine. And chances are you'll kind of rise to the pressure. For me, my vertical, I was jumping 32 going into my pro day, which was that and the bench press were like my things. That was what I was best at. And I ended up jumping 35 and I was like, holy smokes, that's sweet. But I went to the bench press and I was hitting 25 on the bench press and I hit 19 on pro day.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's not what I wanted at all. And do you know how many times somebody said something to me about you only benched 19 on pro day? Not once. Nobody ever said anything to me about it because it doesn't matter. They know the player that you are.
Right.
They just want to see what you're going to do under pressure. They want to see kind of how you walk and move around and how you can interact with people and where they can find value in you.
Yeah, I don't think there's any pressure higher, maybe playing on the Super Bowl than going into, pro day, when you just got all those eyes on you and you hear about it, that they're looking at you, they're poking you, they're asking you to turn around. They're asking everything about your history.
Yeah, they did not to cut you off, they did this thing called the cattle walk. What you would do, literally, it was a cattle walk. So our weight room at Michigan is huge, but it has a lane right down the middle of it. And we stripped down to nothing but our compression shorts, and we would roll them all the way up, and they would walk us down the center of the aisle. Now there's like 100 scouts between the NFL, the CFL, and the UFL. They're just lying in the weight room, and you're just walking down the middle of them, and they're all staring at you with clipboards. You stop in the middle, and our strength coach would command us to air squat. So we would air squat, turn, air squat, turn, and just do that, and then walk down. They measure us, they yell out the measurements, and I've never felt like more of a piece of meat in my life. I was like, I am a racehorse, and somebody's trying to buy me or not. But in terms of where your mind should be at on a day like that, especially when you understand that you're playing with house money, is nothing is deserved in life. And the quicker you can get to that point and understand that you don't deserve anything, it's only earned, you'll be in a lot better spot. Because if I can go into my pro day, not thinking that I deserve anything, but I have to earn it. And I get the opportunity to earn this. And if it doesn't go well, I'm not that upset about it because I don't deserve anything.
Sure.
And just to get to that place is a sense of freedom that you get because you don't feel like, well, I'm going to screw this up. Well, no, you have the opportunity to actually gain it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I remember my brothers and I having a conversation, about Jim Kelly going to 4 Super Bowls with the Bills and losing all 4. And people were like, oh, he deserves a Super Bowl. But you're right. No, you got to earn it. No one's just going to get your 4th one. They're like, well, let's let Jim win today. No way. You got to earn it. There's so many great players. If you want to stick with quarterbacks, Dan Marino. He went to 1 his rookie year, never won. Dan Fouts, who's one of my favorite, never even got to the Super Bowl. There are guys that just spend their entire career bounce around the NFL and never make it that far. Joel, here's a good question for you. I played D1, and this is from Kevin, former college player. I played D1, and my career ended before I wanted it to. I assume it's an injury or got cut. I don't know. I'm still grieving it, honestly. How do you know when it's time to stop chasing and start building something new? And when did you know you were done playing football?
Well, I think the grief is great. I think that's so essential to negative change. Obviously, you experience negative change in terms of your career ending a little bit early. So you got to grieve it. There's always a gap between what we expected and then the reality of what happened. And it's usually filled with pain, disappointment, sense of loss. And there's a necessity to grieve. So you're on the right track, first of all. And there's no, set timeline to grief. You come to a decision point where, can I do anything about what happened? No, I can't. I can't do anything about what happened. All right. So what do I want to do moving forward? What is my direction? So you decide your direction, and then you figure out what the first step of your direction is. It is that simple. Now it's not really that easy, but it is that simple. And for me, the moment I knew I wanted to stop playing football, I was in Pittsburgh. So after I was cut from Arizona, I went to Pittsburgh for a workout, sent home. Atlanta for a workout, sent home. Indianapolis for a workout, sent home. Waited 5 months. Pittsburgh asked me to come back on a Friday. I'm there. I get yelled at by Mike Tomlin, and it did not do anything to me. It didn't affect me at all. It didn't motivate me at all. And at that point in time, I knew that it just wasn't for me. This didn't serve me anymore. It's not the path I wanted to take. So the advantage that I had was being able to make that decision for myself. Now, right. When that decision is not made by you, it becomes tougher because it feels like it was taken from you. So sit in that grief and don't do it alone. There's plenty of people whose college careers have ended early, and make sure to talk to those people. It's not about being thick-skinned or getting lucky with experiences that people are able to move on. It's because they grieve, then they decide their direction and what is the first step to get to that point. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lull period, and give yourself some grace.
For sure. Here we are 36 minutes in, and team, I want you guys to understand, Joel's not just a former football player. Joel, why don't you tell the audience exactly what you do now and how? I mean, just your answers alone tell me you're not a jock. Yeah, I mean, you've taken this, you've put a lot of thought in this. Tell the audience what you do now.
Yeah, so really before I made that decision with the Steelers to not pursue football anymore, I started to pursue a career in mental performance coaching. I saw the person that I entered Michigan as and the person that I left the Cardinals as, and it was a completely different person. And I wanted to figure out how to provide that opportunity for people without spending 6 years at the Division I level and NFL level. So I have taken all of my experiences and boiled them down into coaching. I coach people one-on-one and in groups on mindset development, and then also leadership, because leadership is probably one of the more important things in life, regardless if you're on a sports team, in a business, or just have a family. Understanding how to lead is a huge contributor to success. So that is what I started to pursue after football. I started from ground zero. I had a couple of mentors, and after 2 years of being in the industry of coaching, I now work with several multi-million dollar businesses and work with some of their employees, and still work with individuals, just helping them figure out how to navigate life instead of just guess or have this idea of this is the way that I've always been and it's the way that I'm always going to continue to be. To give them that competitive advantage that I gained after my football career was over is what I do for people now.
Awesome. Coach Williams, high school football coach. Joel, how do I get my kids to buy into mental conditioning when they think it's soft, especially my linemen who think toughness is only physical?
That's a good question. Well, the first thing I would ask is, have you put them through a situation that has legitimately tested their mental?
Nice.
Not just conditioning, but our strength coach at Michigan was really good at playing mind games with us. Now, you have to understand, you're working with high school kids. They're a little bit more mentally fragile. So it's not something that you can just continue to beat down on them, but you have to test them. If you're just trying to throw something at them that they have no experience of a pain behind, there's no reason for them to want to fix it. So I would encourage you to push them mentally and kind of challenge them. And there's different ways that you can do that. It's not about running them to death. That's not what it's about. But, we had this rule in the weight room where if you yawned, it was 25 push-ups for everyone. And when that got implemented, it was the dumbest thing. I mean, the dumbest thing. I'm like, what? This makes no sense. And so we proceeded to do a lot of push-ups because a lot of people thought it was the dumbest thing. And then what would happen is we would get mad at our strength coach. This is the dumbest thing, and you're making us do push-ups. Well, guess what? Actually, this is teaching you a whole different lesson that you're going to need to figure out. You have to understand that this team has a priority and it has a train that's leaving the station. And if you're not willing to jump on it, then you're probably not fit for this program. Now, Michigan, so you got to find your own version of that, but you got to find a way to test their mental a little bit so that they can figure out, oh, yeah, coach is right. Because listen, everybody talks about adversity in sports, but nobody talks about how to handle it. I mean, you look at adverse situations that you've run into maybe in your last season and use those as examples to say, hey, listen, this is how we handled this. Do you think that this is adequate? Probably not. Okay, so this is what we have to do to avoid this.
Love it. Love it. Joel, is mental strength something you either have or you don't, or is it truly coachable? Give us an example of someone who is transformed and that you have worked with.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely coachable. The thing that people don't understand, they have a sense of comfort. This is, generally speaking, everybody that I work with. They have a sense of comfort, and sometimes that comfort is comfort in suffering. They know this poor situation so well, and it doesn't serve them at all, but it's comfortable because they know it. So if you can show somebody the other side of that, life doesn't get easier. You just do hard better. You're able to handle hard situations better. My success and how I got to where I was being put in hard situations. And I figured out how to handle hard better. And I've seen this with the people that I work with. They need a little challenge and they need a little bit of accountability. Mm-hmm. If you are expecting to make change in your life and you don't tell a single person about it, you will find a way to justify not making that change. Humans are great justifiers. They're really good at being able to experience a moment of adversity and use it as a reason to go back to old ways. You have to bring somebody else into the equation. That's why I do what I do. You don't have to hire a coach, but I would suggest you bring somebody else into the equation, because when we can complement change with accountability, you can see the other side of this.
Sure.
A lot of people look at people in successful positions and covet the position they have, but don't necessarily covet the process that it took to get to that spot. So being able to put people in those positions of uncomfortability and hard situations to understand how to handle hard better creates mental toughness.
Sure. What's the one mental habit or hack that separates athletes who make it from the ones that almost made it?
Resilience, 100%.
Really?
100%. Yeah, it's resilience. Like, you don't get to determine really anything for your career besides how you're going to move forward. If the coach decides to bench you, you ultimately don't have a decision over that. So you have the opportunity to exercise some resilience. Mm-hmm. You can either sit in this pocket of playing the blame game and feeling sorry for yourself, or you can grieve that moment of pain and you can choose your response. It's not always getting benched. It's not always getting injured, but there will be continuous moments of adversity and negative change, in your ability to adapt and overcome, not just in spite of, but precisely because of, will lead you to great success. I can absolutely assure you that. It's not just an athletic thing. It is also a life thing.
Awesome. What does accountability actually look like in your coaching, Joel? I mean, it's easy for your clients to go, oh, he played at Michigan, he played in the NFL. So you now have to hold your clients accountable. What does that look like for you? And not just a motivational poster version. What does the real version of accountability look like for you and your clients?
Well, so accountability has to be met with challenge first. Like, they have to have something to be held accountable to. So let's say I spoke with, this happened a couple weeks ago. I spoke with this company about implementing servant leadership and becoming servant leaders. And so at the end of it, I say, all right, so how are we going to implement this? what are some actions we're going to take to do this? And they'll say, all right, I'm going to show up a little bit earlier. I'll help them load the truck so they're not doing it by themselves. All right, great. So I want you to text me when you've done that. And if you don't text me, I will assume that you haven't done it. So usually they will do it and they text me. But if they don't, and they don't want to change their habits, that's okay. But you should understand that on the backside of this, your employer is also going to know that you're not willing to commit to being a servant leader and changing your habits. And at that point in time, I'm out of the picture. He's got to decide what he's going to do with you. So
sure,
it's just some pressure that you apply. Like you can't challenge people and then expect that they're going to be 100% willing to commit to that. Like if people want to be challenged and they want to grow and they want to progress, you have to hold them to that. Like if we're assigned 12 reps in the weight room and you hit your 12 reps and you're watching your buddy go and he hits 10, are you willing to say it's 12 reps? It's not 10 reps. You have to do 2 more. I got put in that situation. This is the first time I ever stepped into a position of leadership. Was literally this exact situation. I hit my reps. It was 12 reps. And we had a gentleman who was, he was more of a me than a we type of guy. And so my strength coach said, so he was challenging me. He goes, I want you to count his reps. I was like, yeah, no problem. I got you. Supposed to hit 12. I think he hit 9. I went back to him. I said, he hit 9. I said, well, go tell him. I was like, what? Go tell him he hit 9 reps. And so I went up to him. This is the first moment that I really had ever held anybody accountable to, because for so long I was working on gaining respect. Well, at the same time, I had enough respect to be able to talk to somebody and hold them accountable. So I said to him, I said, hey, listen, it's 12 reps. He goes, I know. I said, you didn't hit 12, you hit 9. No, I didn't. I said, man, I stood right behind you. I counted all of them. I'm not saying this to belittle you. I'm saying this because the standard is 12 reps. And then if you're not willing to meet the standard, then I don't know how I can help you.
Right.
And he was combative for a little bit. Anybody would be. They get defensive, especially if you're not used to being held accountable. You get defensive. But, there's a certain way to communicate to people that, hey, I'm actually not attacking you. I'm just trying to help you. And I'm genuinely trying to help you. And once he understood that, he flipped the script for the day, but then he kind of went back to his old ways. And long story short, he didn't end up in Michigan anymore. So,
well, yeah, that happens. So if you knew then what you know now, Joel, you've been on both sides, an athlete and a coach. What do you know now about mental performance that you wish you had known when you were playing?
That's a big question. I would say that, mental performance in a whole is not something that you can just hope for.
Right.
Like it happens through action. I've said it a couple of times. Like life does not get easier. And that is not a reason to not continue to pursue hard things. You just understand how to do hard better. Like if we look at Sherry DeVoe, she just won the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
She had been in horse racing for 13 years till in 2017, she was ready to quit. Her husband told her otherwise. The next year she opens her own barn. The year after that, she gets her first win. And now she's won the Kentucky Derby and the first female trainer to do so.
Wow.
And she didn't get that by hoping for it. Like you have to be willing to go through hard things. And yeah, it kind of sucks, but I can assure you that the life beyond the suck is way better than just never getting into it.
Yeah.
No doubt. I think every generation before us will say that this generation is soft. But what's the biggest mental weakness you see in athletes today that nobody is talking about?
Oh, the biggest mental weakness. You know what? I think in the world of the transfer portal, the biggest mental weakness people have is just escaping situations that they don't like. People find themselves in a spot where maybe they're not going to play right away, and they were told out of high school that they would. And so what do? They leave. A lot of times the way this happens, it's not a lateral movement. They're not going from Michigan to Ohio State. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit. You're going to have to drop down. Please take this from me as somebody who did not start until their 4th year in college and ended up signing an NFL contract, that there is some glory in persistence.
Right.
Like, just leaving is not beneficial. It's easy. Like, there's opportunities to do so, but it's not always beneficial. And I think we have encouraged this idea of, hey, if it's difficult and it looks like there's a little bit hard of a journey, just get out of there. Like, that's not the answer. It's sometimes it is. Okay. I'll admit it. Like, if you've been there for so many years and you just don't see the vision anymore, and you are like, I'm cool with stepping down, do it. No problem at all. But when you don't give yourself a long enough chance to actually figure it out, which usually takes at least 1.5 to 2 years to figure out if this is a place you want to be or not. It doesn't take 1 month.
Right.
Give yourself that opportunity. Do not just leave, because it's just what it encourages right now. You get no penalty if you leave. So people do it all the time.
Sure. All right, let's drop Joel into today's environment, NIL and transfer portal. What would you do? What opportunities would you chase? What decisions would you make? Because you would have a lot.
Yep. Yeah. I had made the decision that when I wasn't playing, okay, I'm 3 years in, I'm not playing. I made the decision that I was going to finish my degree. I was at the University of Michigan. What a fool I would be if I didn't finish my degree. Right. So I knew that was what I was going to do. Now, the transfer portal was different back then. I say back then like it's been 15 years. I mean, I guess it's been like 3 or 4, but still, it's all about priorities. Like, you have to prioritize what is important to you. And sometimes maybe you can't think clearly because money is floating around college football like crazy. Right. And we chase the money. But sometime money's going to run out. Okay. Right. It's going to run out, and you can also make more of it. So you might be in a great spot, exactly where you need to be, on the road to success. You haven't quite reached that point yet, but you're there and you're in the right spot, and somebody's throwing some money at you from the left here. Well, maybe just stick with me. Maybe if you just continue the process, you'll see some more fruit from that tree you've been growing, rather than just diving off. I mean, it's literally what I just talked about. But NIL is a wonderful thing. It's a great opportunity to make money off of the game and your talents. But I'm telling you, money doesn't make you happy. I was sitting in the NFL with a contract in front of me that was over $1 million, and I was so incredibly unhappy and didn't want to be there anymore. Wow. And I think I have the benefit of having that experience. Like, I was in a position where I clearly understood that money was not going to make me happy. And, giving somebody money doesn't instantly mean that they're going to become successful either. So focus on the people, focus on the tenure and what is happening inside of the facility, rather than the dollar sign they're throwing at you. Like, you can always make more money. Right.
That's really an example of be careful what you wish for, right? You finally get that NFL contract in front of you and you're like, I don't want it. I'm not happy anymore. One of the things that Aaron and I try to say now, Michigan just all around is an exceptional institution. Their athletics, as well as that degree. One of the things we tell these athletes that jump around is, think about your legacy at Michigan. If you were to pick up the phone and call a Michigan booster alumni, that phone call is going to get returned, right? Or that phone's going to get picked up. But if you're an athlete that are jumping around, you've gone to 4 universities in 4 years, there's no roots there. They're not going to take that call. And not to mention, a lot of these guys, they don't realize when you transfer that much, not all of your units are going to go with you, right?
Yeah.
And when your eligibility is up and when you're done, you're zero use to that athletic department. Your eligibility is up. Now you're a liability, and they don't want you around. So, that's a rude awakening for some of these kids because, I mean, you're the top 1% of the 1%. I know at the top of the conversation you said you had a cup of coffee with the NFL, but like you've read the stats and you know the stats. What's the percentage of guys that go on to the NFL, Joel?
I think it's like less than 1%, no?
Less than 1%. Less than 1%.
Right.
So, I mean, you're sitting there negotiating, not really negotiating with the Jaguars, kind of burning a bridge with the Jaguars.
Yeah.
You're talking to the Jaguars. You're talking to the Cardinals. Then you get a look with the Colts, the Steelers, the Falcons. Man, that's impressive. A lot of these kids, but it's a grind. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be a first-round draft pick. It's still a grind.
Yeah.
So what do these athletes need to understand? One of the things that Aaron and I have talked about, we've shared with you, a lot of these athletes wrap up their identity and their position in their sport. How do they step away from that, and how do they find closure in that and that's what I did. That's not who I am.
Yeah. Well, you got to identify that you're playing a child's game. I mean, you are playing a child's game, and it's not your purpose. Like, your purpose is not to be a football player. That's something that I got my mind wrapped up in, because when you go to college to play football, it does consume your life. You are spending a majority of your time on football, in or around the facility. And so it's really easy to just start like convincing yourself that that is where you're getting your value from.
Sure.
But here's the problem. You hit this roller coaster of emotions because when things are good, you're in a really good spot. But when you get yelled at and things aren't going well, man, you are down in the dumps. Trust me, I've been there. And for me, it was about my faith. It was about my faith and understanding that the reason that I was placed on this earth was to spread the word of Jesus Christ. Now, what football did for me, it created a platform for me to do that. That was the avenue that he had me on. And man, what freedom that I got from being able to disconnect my identity from football and understand that, hey, actually what I do really doesn't define who I am. It's an opportunity that I've been given, and I'm going to do everything that I can to pursue this opportunity and continue it. But ultimately, it's not my purpose. Like, my purpose in life is not to play the game of football, a child's game.
Right.
It's to spread the word of Jesus Christ and to love him. And the faster you can get to that spot and just removing your identity from the game of football, you'll experience a lot more success because your value doesn't ride on your performance on the field.
Right.
And that's a trap a lot of guys fall into. And it's also when people leave the game of football because their identity was so tied up in it for so long, and it's all they knew for 7-8 years. When they leave the game, they are completely lost. They have no sense of direction.
Yep.
Like, the moment you're able to remove your identity from it, you're able to see, okay, the big picture. Yeah, I'm playing football right now, but I would also like to get a degree in something other than general studies, something, meaningful, maybe business, economics, engineering. And then I'd like to pursue a career in that. And if something changes along the way, then I'll ride with it. I mean, I got a degree in engineering, and it's currently collecting dust right to my left. It doesn't do anything for me. But it's not the path that I've been on, and I've been trusting the plan. And I'm not worried, man. I'm not worried. And I think that's also a huge relief that I gained from a result of disconnecting my identity is I'm not worried about what's going to happen. I know how I'm going to go about handling my business, but I'm not worried about the end result.
Yep. You talk about that, your engineering degree. One of the things about college outside of sports is just shows you can start something and finish it, right? Because you're jumping through a lot of hoops. And we're closing in on the end of the hour. I mean, Joel, I know, Aaron talks too much, so I'm going to try and reel her in a little bit. But I could go on for another hour easily. We didn't touch on all the questions. I mean, team, this is pre-recorded. So, what the thing is that, like you guys and like Joel has a life. And, tell the audience why we have this pre-recorded, because I think it's absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, so we're recording this on Wednesday, and tomorrow on Thursday is my grandmother's 90th birthday. Her
Yay!
90th trip around the sun. She's booking her ticket for another trip, so we're going to celebrate it.
I love
That's
it.
unreal. That's what I mean. Imagine the wisdom in that room. If you could just have 10, 15 minutes to talk to her and just, I mean, you said it earlier before we went on camera, 9 decades.
Yeah.
Of
9 decades of experience.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, this is Aaron. Did you want to jump in? Do you want to say anything before we close it out? Because honestly, I could keep going here, and I know that I want to be respectful of Joel's time, and I know that you've got plenty of information to cut it down. And Joel will do it again. I will do it again. Because,
yeah, absolutely.
You're incredible. I mean, just there's so many golden nuggets for the audience to take away. So much wisdom. You have a lot of depth to you, which I really appreciate. So we're so grateful our paths have crossed. You truly offer a lot of insights, I think, for these athletes, for families, and for business coaches and professionals as well. And so in life in general. So I'm just super grateful. This was super insightful. And I was just taking it all in. So I have a lot of questions too.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, we can definitely make it happen again. And I would also say that anybody listening to this podcast, you are on the right track. Like the fact that you are diving into this stuff and developing a deeper understanding about all of it, you're on the right track. Just stay in that pocket. And it's very cliche, but trust the process. I think I've said this to you guys before. Things are cliche because they're true. It's just the way that it works. You gotta trust the process and remove some emotional attachment from the outcome.
Yeah. You know, when we first met Joel, Aaron, he, in his defense, he probably thought we were trying to sell him something. So now that we've got you on camera, we're going to talk to you about our multi-level marketing plan here. I'm kidding. We got him.
A timeshare.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, Joel, this was just magical, you know, and I know that, you know, Aaron's going to talk to me about this. Maybe she was a little shy. Aaron has a high school football player. Her son, who's Jake, who's an absolute rock star. This is what he needs to listen to, Aaron. I mean, somebody who has paved the way. One of the things we try to tell our athletes, and we didn't really get into it, is, you know what? F it. I'm going to ask you. One of the things I say to these younger athletes, you got to get a mentor. You got to get somebody that you know, if you're a freshman going into a program like Michigan, you have so many mentors there, or whether you're at Ohio State or Oregon or even a D2, D3 school. You know, how important is a mentor? We'll kind of leave it on that one.
Yeah, so important. I have 2 right now. Like currently I have 2. I think probably one of the greatest abilities anybody can have is the ability to become a sponge. When I got to Michigan, one of my friends made that reference. Like, dude, we just got to be a bunch of sponges. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, we got to soak up this information. There's a whole lot of people who know a whole lot more than us. And the moment we can accept that and then just be willing to soak up the information they're going to provide, good, bad, or otherwise, we're going to be in a lot better spot. Like, I think a lot of people get into, I saw it firsthand. People come into programs like that, regardless of level, and they think they got it figured out. And most of those people don't end up there in 3 years. So the ability to become a sponge and understand that you are not the first person to take this path. There's somebody else who has. Listen to what they have to say and decide, oh, I agree with that. That's probably good insight. Oh, here's a mistake they made. I probably will not do that again. So it's so important. There's so many people with so much knowledge out there, and you'd be a fool not to soak it up.
Yeah. You know, a buddy of mine was a Navy SEAL, and when he went through BUDS and everything, he had a really decorated career. And he was talking about, you know, when he was in BUDS, every single guy that said, he's like, well, you know, how do you think this is going to play out? They said, oh, I got it figured out. No problem. Not one of them made it through. You know, when you make the mistake of saying, I got it figured out, you're done. You just sealed. You know. So can you imagine getting to Michigan and just go, no, I got it all figured out. You're screwed. It's over at that point.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. When we brought in that former Navy SEAL Captain Tom Chabey, when we brought him in, one of the coaches on the staff had mentioned that he didn't need to hear him speak because he had coached at the academies before, so he doesn't need to hear him talk. And in that moment, I was like, dude, what a fool. Like, how unbelievable of you to say that. But, I mean, things always sort themselves out. He was gone the next year, and he currently does not have a job because he thought he had it all figured out. Like, a lot of my thoughts, most of my thoughts are not original. They're things that I have heard from other people and then found the evidence that they are true, and so I adopt them. And like staying in this rigid mindset that once you have a belief that it can never be challenged, like that is also a bad place to be. Like you should always be willing to question your thought process and, hey, maybe there is another way to think about this. Like the whole idea, like you see this in the business world all the time. Well, this is the way that I've always done it.
Right.
Like, okay, well, guess what? What got you here won't get you there.
Right.
And it's not just the business world. Well, that's applicable. Like this works in everybody. So challenge what you think and be a sponge.
Yep. No doubt. You know, one of the most incredible quotes from Lou Holtz is, "I've never learned anything by talking." Right.
Yeah. So, yes. Yeah. That's money. That's a really good quote.
How amazing is that? I mean, Lou Holtz, 5'6", 165 pounds, but led the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to victories. On that one, team, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Joel, thank you for your time. Aaron, thank you for your time. This couldn't have happened without you, Joel. I mean, your story is absolutely remarkable, and I learned so much more today than what I could just find on your LinkedIn. So before we exit out, Joel, where can people get a hold of you, whether it's a website, your social media, or an email?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My username is Joel_Honigford59. You can find my website, www.honigfordps.com, Honigford PS. I'm on Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Joel Honigford, really all platforms. I post pretty much the same stuff everywhere, just sharing some insight into things that I learn. So feel free to reach out, even if you got a question that didn't get answered on this and you just want to know. I have zero issue answering your questions. So reach out.
Awesome. I got one more question. It's my favorite question. I can't believe I didn't ask. What superstitions did you have as an athlete?
Did I tell you guys this the first time we talked?
I don't know.
So when I started in COVID, I got really nervous before games and I would throw up before every game. Okay. So moving the following year, I was a lot less nervous before those games in 2021, but the previous year I'd thrown up before every game. And so what would happen instinctually, I would leave warm-ups, I would head up the tunnel, and all of a sudden, like, I'm not nervous, but I'm like, man, I got to throw up. And so for the remainder 3 years of my college career, before every single game, I would throw up. Me and this other tight end, Luke Schoonemaker, would head into the stalls and we would just both throw up immediately. Like, it was inevitable. And then when I went to the NFL, before my first preseason game, I was texting one of my buddies who was with the Dolphins. I was like, dude, I think I'm going to throw up again. He said, dude, you got to leave that behind. I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Well, there you have it, team. You don't need Ozempic. You just got to go play at Michigan. And you'll lose a bunch of weight throwing up before the game.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome. Joel, Aaron, again, thank you guys so much. You guys, team, have a great time. We'll see you next week for Path to the Pros with a new guest.
Thank you.